Hello, Lucy, is it?
Yeah.
Please, let me step in 2 seconds.
Yes.
Death followed Lucy Letby around.
The UK's worst child killer.
Did she or didn't she?
Lucy Letby must be free!
Troubling questions
This was so obvious.
about a child serial killer's conviction.
I think she will be exonerated.
Is that right? You're not overblowing this, are you?
Could Lucy Letby really be innocent?
Probably going to be the biggest miscarriage of justice in criminal justice history of the United Kingdom.
When Lucy Letby's name first appeared in British headlines in 2015, it was not as a criminal suspect, but as a promising young nurse working in one of the most delicate and demanding areas of healthcare, a neonatal unit.
Can you come in, okay?
We need to speak to you. I'm arresting you on suspicion of murder and attempted murder.
Detectives took a female into custody
On suspicion of murdering 8 babies.
and the attempted murder of 6 others.
Don't look, let's go in.
Introduce yourself, please.
Lucy Letby.
With her quiet manner, youthful smile, and apparent devotion to sick and premature babies, she embodied the very image of trust that parents place in those who care for their most vulnerable children. Yet within a decade, her name would become synonymous with betrayal, cruelty, and one of the most shocking series of crimes in modern British history. Between 2015 and 2016, the Countess of Chester Hospital in northwest England experienced a series of unexplained infant deaths and sudden collapses in its neonatal unit. At first, they seemed like tragic but isolated events, the kind of heartbreaking losses that sometimes occur even in the most advanced hospitals. But as the months passed, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Deaths were rising sharply. Medical anomalies were appearing that defied explanation, and one nurse seemed to be present almost every time. That nurse was Lucy Letby. Lucy Letby, a seemingly ordinary life. Lucy Letby was born on January 4, 1990, in Hereford, a cathedral city on the Welsh border. She was an only child, raised in what seemed like a quiet, supportive, middle-class household. Her parents, John and Susan Letby, doted on her. By most accounts, she had a normal, stable upbringing. Friends from her school days later described her as studious, kind, and somewhat introverted. From a young age, Letby expressed a desire to work in healthcare. She was academically gifted, particularly in science, and earned a place at the University of Chester to study nursing. Specializing in neonatal care, she seemed drawn to the most fragile of patients, premature and sick babies who required intensive medical support to survive. During her training, she completed placements at various hospitals, impressing colleagues with her dedication. She joined the Countess of Chester Hospital full-time after graduating in 2011, working in the neonatal unit. Her role involved monitoring premature babies, administering medication, and working closely with doctors and parents. Colleagues remembered her as diligent, sometimes quiet, but outwardly committed to her work. She was known to post cheerful updates on social media about her career, sharing photos of herself in scrubs and expressing pride in helping sick babies recover. Nothing in her public persona suggested the darkness that lay beneath. The Countess of Chester Hospital, a place of trust. The Countess of Chester Hospital was a medium-sized NHS facility serving Cheshire and surrounding areas. Its neonatal unit cared for premature babies and infants needing special attention. Parents who entered those sterile, softly lit rooms placed their deepest trust in the nurses and doctors, often forming bonds with the staff who guided them through their babies' critical first days. The neonatal unit was not considered particularly high risk compared to larger, specialized centers. Serious incidents and infant deaths were rare. In fact, before 2015, the hospital recorded an average of 2 to 3 neonatal deaths per year. The staff, though often overworked, prided themselves on compassionate care. It was within this environment of trust and vulnerability that Lucy Letby operated. The first signs of trouble in June 2015. The calm rhythm of the neonatal unit was shattered by an event that initially seemed like an unfortunate tragedy. A premature baby boy, later identified in court only as Child A, collapsed unexpectedly. Despite resuscitation efforts, he died. His death shocked staff, but at first there was no reason to suspect foul play. Premature babies, after all, are fragile and prone to sudden medical complications. The following day, however, his twin sister, Child B, also collapsed in the same unit. She survived after intensive treatment, but her sudden deterioration alarmed doctors. 2 twins, both suffering sudden, unexplained collapses within 24 hours, was highly unusual. Still, the incidents were logged as tragic anomalies. Doctors reviewed the cases, but no clear cause was found. Behind the scenes, though, some staff began to feel unease. A rising pattern of collapses over the following weeks and months. More babies in the unit suffered unexpected collapses. Some died, others survived, but only after dramatic interventions. The events shared troubling similarities. Babies who had been stable suddenly deteriorated without warning. Symptoms such as unusual skin discoloration, rapid collapses, and unexplained blood test results appeared. In several cases, infants had air bubbles in their bloodstreams, something rarely seen in natural circumstances. By August 2015, the number of incidents was far above what the unit normally experienced. Nurses and doctors grew increasingly anxious, yet they had no clear explanation. At first, they wondered whether the ward's equipment was faulty or whether infection was spreading through the unit. Investigations into hygiene, oxygen supplies, and staff practices were launched, but nothing irregular was found. What went unnoticed, or at least unspoken, was that Lucy Letby had been present during nearly every incident. The case of Child C, one of the earliest cases that deeply unsettled doctors, was that of Child C, a tiny baby boy born prematurely in June 2015. Initially, he was stable and progressing well. On the night of his collapse, Letby was on duty. Without warning, Child C suffered a dramatic deterioration. His oxygen levels plummeted, and despite frantic efforts by staff, he died. The cause of his sudden collapse baffled the medical team. Later, during Letby's trial, prosecutors argued that she had deliberately introduced air into his stomach, causing fatal damage. At the time, however, his death was recorded as unexplained. His parents, devastated, were told that their baby had succumbed to complications common among premature infants. They had no idea that suspicion was beginning to grow quietly among some of the doctors. Mounting concern among doctors. By the autumn of 2015, senior consultants in the neonatal unit were alarmed. The number of deaths was rising sharply. Between June and October, several infants had died, more than the average for an entire year. Many of the deaths shared unusual features, including strange blotchy skin appearances and unexpected collapses of babies who had previously been stable. Doctors began to meet informally to discuss their concerns. At first, they explored possible environmental causes, infections, equipment failures, staffing shortages. But these theories failed to explain the bizarre circumstances. Some doctors began to notice a chilling coincidence. Lucy Letby was always present. Time and again, she was either the designated nurse or happened to be nearby when babies collapsed. Yet raising suspicion against a nurse was almost unthinkable. Letby was well liked, considered conscientious, and had no prior disciplinary issues. Suggesting that a nurse might be deliberately harming babies seemed unimaginable. Still, the doubts would not go away. Child D escalation. In June 2015, another baby, Child D, a premature girl, died after a sudden collapse. Once again, she had been stable before deteriorating under mysterious circumstances. Post-mortem examinations offered no clear explanation. During Letby's trial years later, prosecutors alleged that she had injected air into Child D's bloodstream, causing an air embolism. At the time, though, the death was recorded as unexplained. The mounting cluster of deaths now weighed heavily on the consultants. They began documenting the incidents carefully, noting the times, symptoms, and staff present. Though no one had yet confronted Letby directly, her name was appearing again and again in their notes. Hospital management's response. As concerns grew within the medical team, hospital management was informed. However, instead of launching a full-scale investigation or alerting police, the administration downplayed the issues. Managers reassured staff that the deaths were likely coincidental, the result of the inherent risks of neonatal care. For doctors, this response was frustrating. They were witnessing an alarming rise in deaths with no medical explanation, yet their concerns were brushed aside. This decision, to protect the hospital's reputation rather than escalate the issue, would later be harshly criticized. By not acting on doctors' warnings, managers allowed Letby to continue working with the most vulnerable patients. Psychological manipulation. During this period, Letby presented herself as a dedicated, even compassionate nurse. She comforted grieving parents, attended funerals, and sometimes kept in touch with families after their babies died. To outsiders, she appeared empathetic, sharing in the pain of those she served. In reality, prosecutors later argued, this was part of her manipulation. By embedding herself in the grief process, she deflected suspicion and maintained her image as a caring professional. Few could imagine that the smiling nurse holding their hand might be the cause of their child's death. The case of Child E and Child F. In August 2015, Letby allegedly attempted to kill Child E, a premature boy. His parents noticed blood in his mouth and raised concerns. Despite interventions, his condition worsened, and he later died. Doctors later concluded that Letby had likely introduced air into his bloodstream. On the same night, his twin brother, Child F, suddenly collapsed. He survived, but tests later revealed unusually high levels of insulin in his system. Prosecutors argued this was deliberate insulin poisoning by Letby. At the time, however, no connection was made. The events were recorded as medical anomalies. Parents, devastated and confused, were left with more questions than answers. A dark pattern emerging by the end of 2015. At least 5 babies had died under suspicious circumstances, with several more suffering sudden collapses but surviving. The neonatal unit, once considered a safe haven, was now under a shadow. Staff morale was shaken, and whispers about Letby's presence grew louder, though still unspoken in official channels. What made the situation so complex was the lack of hard evidence. Babies in neonatal care often die from natural causes, and distinguishing between medical tragedy and foul play is notoriously difficult. Without clear forensic proof, suspicions remained just that, suspicions. But the sheer number of incidents was becoming impossible to ignore. End of the first year, by early 2016, the Countess of Chester Hospital had recorded far more infant deaths than in any previous year. The consultants, increasingly alarmed, began pressing harder for answers. They noted that the common factor in nearly all the cases was Lucy Letby's presence, yet still, no action was taken. Letby continued to work her shifts, smiling at colleagues, caring for babies, and blending seamlessly into the environment of trust and compassion that defines neonatal nursing. For parents, the nightmare was only just beginning. They could not know that the very nurse caring for their newborns was at the center of a storm building quietly behind the hospital's closed doors. Escalation, suspicion, and silence. By the start of 2016, the atmosphere inside the Countess of Chester Hospital's neonatal unit had changed dramatically. Once a place of fragile hope where premature babies were nurtured towards survival, it was now a ward haunted by whispers, fear, and unease. In 2015, the hospital had recorded an unprecedented number of infant deaths, far more than any other year on record. Babies who had seemed stable suddenly collapsed. Twins and triplets were hit by mysterious, simultaneous emergencies. Some survived, but many did not. Behind closed doors, senior doctors were increasingly alarmed. They studied the medical charts, reviewed the patterns, and came to a chilling realization. Almost every time tragedy struck, Lucy Letby was on duty. A deadly new year, the start of 2016, brought no relief. On February 9, a premature baby boy, known later in court as Child G, collapsed twice in one night while Letby was working. He survived, but with serious health complications. Just weeks later, Child H, another premature infant, experienced 2 unexplained collapses in quick succession. Both babies had been considered stable before their sudden deteriorations. Doctors were bewildered. Tests for infection came back negative. Equipment was checked and found to be functioning normally. Still, the collapses kept coming, defying medical explanation. Then, in April 2016, the unit was rocked again. Child I, a baby girl born very prematurely, endured a series of sudden collapses over several weeks. On April 23, she died. Her parents had been told she was making progress, even close to discharge, yet she suddenly deteriorated fatally. Post-mortem tests revealed nothing conclusive. Once again, the death was written off as a tragic but natural consequence of prematurity. But among the consultants, doubts hardened into conviction. Something was terribly wrong, and the common factor was no longer just coincidence. Doctors begin to speak up. The group of consultants working on the neonatal ward, including Dr. Stephen Breary, Dr. Ravi Jairam, and others, began holding private discussions. They charted the collapses and deaths, comparing dates, times, and staff rosters. The pattern was undeniable. Lucy Letby was present in nearly every case. Dr. Jairam later described his feelings at the time. The possibility that a nurse might be deliberately harming babies was almost unthinkable. But the statistics were screaming at us. Something was happening, and it wasn't natural. By the spring of 2016, some consultants were convinced they were dealing with a deliberate actor. Not equipment failure, not infection, but sabotage. Yet they faced an agonizing dilemma: how to prove it, and how to convince hospital management to act. Resistance from management. When the consultants raised their concerns with hospital managers, they were met with resistance. The idea that a nurse, especially a young, popular one like Letby, could be harming babies seemed inconceivable. Managers worried that accusing a staff member without solid proof could damage morale, reputations, and the hospital's standing with regulators. Instead of launching a criminal investigation, management urged caution. They suggested the deaths were coincidental, the result of the inherent risks of neonatal medicine. Some even implied that the consultants were overreacting, perhaps influenced by stress or bias. At one point, doctors were reportedly told to apologize to Letby for harassment. Hospital executives framed the suspicions as unfair and damaging to a nurse who had shown nothing but dedication. For the consultants, the frustration was immense. They were watching babies die, convinced they knew the reason, yet they were blocked at every turn from escalating their concerns to the police. The case of Child K. On February 17, 2016, another incident pushed doctors closer to the brink. Child K, a premature baby girl, was born at just 25 weeks and placed in the neonatal unit. That night, Dr. Jaram walked into the ward unexpectedly and found Letby standing by Child K's incubator. The baby's breathing tube had become dislodged, and her oxygen levels were plummeting. Jaram immediately intervened, resuscitating the baby. He was deeply troubled by what he had seen, not only the sudden dislodgement, but Letby's lack of urgency in responding. He later described the scene as a pivotal moment. It felt less like an accident and more like deliberate tampering. Still, no formal action was taken. The incident was logged, but without physical evidence, management refused to pursue the matter further. A chilling pattern of twins and triplets throughout 2016, another disturbing detail emerged. Letby often targeted siblings. Child A and Child B twins, one died, one collapsed. Child E and Child F twins, one died, one poisoned with insulin but survived. Child I and her siblings, multiple collapses before death. Child L and Child Emsa twins, June 2016. Both collapsed within hours of each other, but survived after resuscitation. The clustering of events within families was almost statistically impossible. Yet management still refused to escalate matters to law enforcement. The case of Child L and Child M in June 2016, twin boys, Child L and Child M, were admitted to the neonatal unit. Both were progressing well when, during Letby's shift, they collapsed within hours of one another. Child L was later found to have dangerously high insulin levels in his blood, later proven to be the result of Letby injecting synthetic insulin into his system. Child M collapsed suddenly but was resuscitated. Both survived, but their near-death experiences were yet another red flag. For doctors, this was beyond coincidence. The probability of multiple unexplained collapses among otherwise stable twins, always under the same nurse's watch, was vanishingly small. They pressed management harder than ever to act. Management's reassignment of Letby by July 2016, the pressure from consultants had reached breaking point. More babies had died, and staff morale was collapsing under the weight of suspicion and fear. Finally, hospital executives took limited action. Lucy Letby was quietly removed from the neonatal ward. Officially, the move was explained as a staffing adjustment to ease tensions. She was reassigned to clerical duties in the hospital's risk and patient safety office. But crucially, management did not report her to the police, nor did they inform parents whose babies had died under suspicious circumstances. Instead, they treated the matter as an internal staffing dispute. For Letby, the reassignment was humiliating but not career-ending. She maintained her innocence, portraying herself as the victim of unfair targeting. She continued to live in Chester, maintain friendships, and even socialize with colleagues outside work. For the doctors, the frustration was unbearable. They knew they had effectively identified a serial killer, yet management's unwillingness to escalate left Letby free, uncharged, and unmonitored. The toll on staff and parents. By the end of 2016, the neonatal unit was traumatized. Staff turnover increased, morale plummeted, and whispers about Letby circulated privately. Some nurses admitted later that they felt uneasy working alongside her, describing her as always there when things went wrong. For the parents of babies who died, grief was compounded by confusion. They had been told their children died from natural complications, but many felt instinctively that something was off. Yet without transparency from the hospital, they remained in the dark. A statistical impossibility, consultants began compiling data to illustrate the scale of the problem. They showed that the hospital's neonatal death rate had spiked dramatically in 2015 and 2016. When Letby was removed from the ward in July 2016, the deaths and collapses stopped almost immediately. This statistical evidence, combined with medical observations, painted a chilling picture. But management remained hesitant to contact police, worried about scandal and reputational damage. It would take another year and relentless pressure from the doctors before law enforcement finally became involved. The end of the second phase. By the close of 2016, Lucy Letby was no longer working directly with babies, but she remained employed at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Officially, she was a nurse in good standing, reassigned to clerical work. Unofficially, she was the prime suspect in the minds of nearly every consultant on the neonatal ward. What made the situation unbearable was the silence. Parents had no idea a nurse was suspected of harming their children. Police had not been called, and Letby herself was free to live a normal life outside the hospital, her crimes hidden behind layers of bureaucratic caution. The nightmare was far from over. The following year, the police would finally be called in. Their investigation, Operation Hummingbird, would uncover evidence that would shock the nation: diaries, handwritten notes, and confessions in Letby's own words. But in 2016, all of that was still in the future. For now, a serial killer had been quietly sidelined but not exposed. By mid-2016, Lucy Letby had been quietly moved out of the neonatal ward at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Officially, she was reassigned to clerical duties due to staffing pressures. Unofficially, doctors were convinced she was behind a string of unexplained infant deaths. Yet management, fearing scandal, had stopped short of alerting the police. For nearly a year, Letby continued to work in administrative roles, her reputation intact outside the hospital walls. Parents whose babies had died under suspicion in the NHS's ability to protect its most vulnerable patients. The psychology of Lucy Letby, one of the most haunting questions of the case, remains why. What drove a seemingly ordinary nurse to kill? Psychiatrists and criminologists debated her motives. Some suggested Letby sought attention, thriving on the drama of medical emergencies, where she could be seen as the hero. Others argued she derived a sense of control over life and death, exploiting the power imbalance between nurse and patient. Her handwritten notes, with phrases like, "I am evil, I did this," and "I killed them on purpose because I am not good enough," suggested a fractured psyche, guilt entwined with compulsion. Yet no clear motive was ever established. Perhaps the most unsettling conclusion is that she killed simply because she could. Legacy and reforms. The Lucy Letby case will have lasting consequences for British healthcare. 1. Mandatory reporting. The case highlighted the dangers of management silencing doctors. Experts called for laws requiring healthcare professionals to escalate serious safety concerns directly to regulators or police. 2. Safeguarding reviews. Hospitals across the UK began reviewing neonatal practices, death rates, and escalation protocols. The need to detect unusual patterns quickly became a top priority. 3. Trust and trauma. For parents, the case inflicted lasting trauma. Some mothers testified that they could never again trust healthcare staff fully. The bond of trust between patient and nurse, once unquestioned, was shaken. 4. Whole life orders. Letby's sentencing reignited debate over the use of whole life orders. Many agreed it was appropriate given the scale and cruelty of her crimes. For others, it underscored the gravity of placing complete trust in healthcare workers. Remembering the babies, beyond the statistics and courtrooms are the 7 babies whose lives were cut short. Child A, Child, C, Child E, Child E, Child I, Child O, Child P, and the 6 others who survived her attempts, left with families who will forever wonder what might have been. Their parents continue to grieve, to demand accountability, and to ensure their children are remembered not just as victims, but as lives full of potential, taken too soon. The Lucy Letby case is not just a story of one nurse's horrific betrayal of trust. It is also a story of systemic failure, of warnings ignored, of management silence, and of the devastating consequences when reputational concerns outweigh patient safety. For years, Letby exploited her position in a place meant to preserve life, turning it into a place of death. For years, doctors suspected but were powerless to act. And for years, parents mourned without answers. Operation Hummingbird finally brought the truth into the light. Justice was delivered, but only after irreparable loss. Lucy Letby will spend the rest of her life behind bars. The families will never recover what they lost. But perhaps the greatest legacy lies in the reforms her crimes demand: a healthcare system where no warning is ignored, no parent's grief is dismissed, and no trust is betrayed again.